Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very special guest for the show here today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
My name is Bill Smpson. I'm calling from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, U.S.
Wow, I've been there. It's beautiful
Yeah.
out there.
And
Can,
you're from Charm City, right? From Baltimore.
um,
You've been in Baltimore at some point.
yes, I have. But I like being in Philadelphia because it was so huge. I traveled to the museums. I travel everywhere, and I feel like that's a good place to visit if you're
Oh yeah.
trying to visit.
Oh yeah. It's a great place to be. It really is. It's a big city, yet it's got a bunch of little neighborhoods, and it just doesn't feel like a big city. It feels like a small town inside a big city, if that makes sense. So,
Yes. So can you tell me? Thank you. Can you tell me about your past leading up into your present?
how far do you want me to go back? Because I was born as a child. We'll
Yeah,
start.
that's what I was going to say. I was about to crack a joke. I was going to say, tell me when you was born as a child. However far back, sir.
Yeah. Well, I came from a family of five siblings. My parents got divorced when I was pretty young, about 6 years old. And so I experienced that loss. Fast forwarding to my teen years, I was 13 when I lost my brother, oldest brother, in a car accident. And then
Oh, I'm sorry.
thank you. And 6 months later, I lost my mom to a heart attack. So as a child, I had experienced a lot of loss. And music was my way of coping. I was in a band. I played drums, and I listened to a lot of radio. And I used to imitate DJs as a kid. Hi, my name is Bill Smpson. Blah 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 blah. And as a result, I ended up becoming a radio personality. I was in a senior musical in my high school. It was a Mel Brooks comedy, and I played a sports announcer. And I would talk like this, hi everybody, my name is blah 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 blah. And every time I would go to give the mic to the person I was interviewing, I'd pull it right back to me. They wouldn't get a chance to say a word. So it was a big, kind of a scene stealing performance kind of thing. And all my guidance counselors and teachers and everybody, oh, you should go into broadcasting, blah blah blah. And so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Went to college, got a communications degree, and ended up as a radio personality. Ended up doing a morning show here in Philadelphia for quite some time. Very popular show. Teamed up with Wendy Williams at one point, and it was stressful, to be honest with you. And so I had to learn ways to learn how to cope with my stress, and got through that and decided, hey, all these things that I'm learning for myself, I want to share with others. So I became a mind-body educator, an integrative therapy practitioner. I've been coaching for over 20 years, doing coaching, teaching Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation. I'm a mindfulness coach, working with a lot of folks. Ended up at a health clinic here in Philadelphia, a major health clinic, with the position of a mind-body educator and integrative therapy practitioner. And over the almost 9 years that I've been working there, my clinical practice, most of my patients have been women. And I would hear over and over again, the trials and tribulations of the men in their lives that they wanted to be in relationship with, yet they just, couldn't deal with these men. And I'm like, well, what if he would to say something like this, or what if he would to do this? And they're like, that would make all the difference in the world. So I was like, I got some insight here. Maybe I should reach out to these men and help them out.
Yes.
And so I've feel as if my calling now is as a relationship coach to help men learn how to communicate effectively, to build trust in a relationship, and to deepen intimacy, and basically be the best version of themselves in a relationship to live the life they love.
There was actually a movie that came out with Will Smith. Kinda, I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it was a movie that he coached him into talking to this
Yeah.
rich woman. Is that what you do? A
No,
little
no,
bit.
no, no. That's a whole different. That's like a pickup thing, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's more about help kind of giving them insight of how they're impacting their relationship. And what their partner or spouse may want in the relationship that they're not getting. A lot of times it's, lack of having vulnerability in the relationship, not talking about his feelings. It's not trying to catch the woman and do what Will Smith did as a kind of a dating coach, to pick up chicks kind of thing. This is really about, more so of personal growth within yourself as a man, and then how that can impact your relationship to be the best version of yourself, so that you can take that to your relationship and build on that, if that makes sense.
That does. Take me on a journey of the process that you give these men that's a little naive about how to keep their relationships, and tell me how you help extend them. Are there testimonials? Tell me everything.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the situation. Oftentimes, I'll have their spouse or partner as a patient or a client, and they're telling me what's going on, and I'm giving them support. And then I would offer, well, what if you were to bring your husband or your partner in? Would he be open to doing that? And so when they do that, that's the first thing, is that they're willing to show up, right? To get some help and to get some insight. So it may start out that way, and then, working with the two of them, and I'm I'd say gifted at being impartial. It's like, I'm not, even though maybe the woman has been, or the spouse or partner has been my patient or client, I'm going to go whoever's making sense. And, I'm not going to pick favorites, put it that way. I'm not going to choose sides. I'm going to be impartial, so that they can learn how to communicate in a way where, first of all, they feel seen and heard. Most of us, and especially women, but all of us, we want to be seen and heard. And oftentimes someone will say something, and then the other person gets defensive. No, I didn't. And they push back.
Yes.
Well, that's not going to go anywhere. You can do that all night long.
Yes.
And when you can pause and say, and actually listen to what your spouse or partner is saying without any judgment. It doesn't mean what they're saying is right or wrong. It's just acknowledging their experience. There's a thing that I say, reality is in the eye of the receiver. And what that means is, how I'm coming across to you, that's your reality, whether I mean to or not. And that's usually the first thing I work with, is understanding that reality is in the eye of the receiver. So if you're telling me, Bill, stop yelling at me, and I'm like, I'm not yelling at you, well, I'm not acknowledging your experience. And even if I don't feel like I'm yelling at you, I can say, you know what, I'm sorry you're experiencing me that way, because I don't mean to yell at you. Well, maybe it's not you're not yelling, maybe it's how you're saying it. So you see how I can start to shift. But once they realize the other person's experience, I do a technique called mirroring or reflective listening, where we just listen, and then the other person says back to the other person what they thought they said. So they may say, oh, what I heard you say was XYZ. Well, actually I said XYA. Oh, so you said XYA. Yep. Okay. Now I understand where you're coming from. Doesn't mean right or wrong. It's just, I hear you and I say it back to you, so you feel seen and heard. And that's what we all want, right? That's where we start to resolve the issue. Because if it's back and forth with, no, I didn't, yes, I did, no, I didn't, no, that's not going to get you anywhere. But when you both feel seen and heard, because what we'll do is reverse the role of what I just did, do it back. And so you both hear each other, and then we can work on resolving the issue. But
go ahead. I just wanted to say something real quick. It is amazing how in psychology class, it was 30 people in my class, and I'm getting to a point here, and we did the X, Y, A, B, C, or A through Z thing, where we told one person something, and by the time it got down to the last person, it was something different. But to have two people, and it's hard, that cannot communicate amongst each other because they're not seeing, it was 30 people in a class. So imagine just two people that can't understand A through Z. You know, they're not listening. So that is an excellent tool. Can you tell me about a success story?
Oh man, I had a guy come to me, professional guy. He was really smart and very intuitive, very insightful, and he came to me in tears. A friend of his mother actually had referred him to me. He was in a deep depression, and first time I'm talking to him, he is just sobbing and sobbing. Doesn't know me from Adam, and just doesn't know where he's going to go. He just broke up with his girlfriend, or she broke up with him, and he was about to be an empty nester. His son was leaving to go away to college, so he felt all alone. And I really felt for the guy, and he didn't have a whole lot of money. He said, "I've got a limited budget that I can work with you. Can you work with me?" And so I did, because I really saw that he was sincere in wanting to grow. And I'd say about maybe 3 to 4 months, things started to shift for him. Another thing, he had lost his job as well. And so here he was, that's why he didn't have the money. Guy ends up getting a job and making like buku bucks, like more money than he could have ever imagined making. That was the first thing. And then the relationship that he had broken up, he was kind of going back and forth. They were kind of getting back together. And previously, she had been the one to break the relationship. And then it got to the point where he got so much confidence in working with me and understanding, setting boundaries with her, getting clarity from her, learning how to communicate with her, honoring her, being vulnerable, all these things. And he took it to task, man, and he went for it. And he said, "No, I can't do this anymore. When you're ready to do X, Y, and Z, then, call me and let's see where we go from there." And then we kept working together. We took a break. It was about maybe a month or so. And I come back, he's all smiles. He's back with this woman. She came back to him owning all of her stuff, saying, what she did, how hard it was for her, and this, that, and the third. And boom, they have been together ever since. And it's been at least a couple of years by now. And just to see him go from this fragile, broken man to having all this confidence and getting this great job, and now in the relationship that he really wanted to be in, but he couldn't be in that relationship the way it was. So he took ownership of what he needed and honored what she needed, and they came together and worked it out.
Well,
So he's my superhero, because he did an amazing job. And that's what it's all about, is being willing to do the work. We can hear about all this stuff and say, "Oh yeah, I know about that." Or I always say, when they say, "I know that," I'm like, "No, you know about it. When you're actually doing the work, then you know it."
So can I ask you a question? How did you develop this program? How did you develop it where you can tell that it's succeeding with different individuals? What did you do differently?
Well, it's, to me, I as a coach, I really try to customize my approach to each one of my clients, because some people want to do worksheets and homework and all this kind of stuff. This guy never did, by the way. And it's really kind of meeting them where they are in terms of what's going to work for them. And we may throw some stuff up against the wall and see what sticks. And based on what I find out from them is how I apply, the coaching that I do. And it also depends on the situation that they're in. If they're, I have a client that I'm working with who has an anger issue, and he's actually been physically abusive, and he's owned it, and he's working on improving that. So I'm going to approach him a lot differently than someone who is having a hard time expressing their feelings or being or communicating effectively. So it really depends on the individual, Kimberly.
Okay. So basically you learned over the years, about relationships yourself, and you apply your what you've learned over those years to helping people succeed with their relationships. Cuz do you even have a book? Do you have a book? Do you have like coaching sessions where you can get on like a Zoom meeting with like 10 people? Do you do that yet?
Not that's I'm working on towards that. Right now, I have a podcast called Men on the Path to Love, so that's where my focus is right now, and building an audience with that for working on a program that I can share with my listeners that listen to the show and my clients as well. And I want to rewind a second, because what I left out of my story is that I've been divorced 3 times.
Wow.
And
So
somebody
you
could say, like,
know,
well, wait a minute, I'm going to go to this guy who has been divorced 3 times for relationship advice.
that's not a bad thing being divorced. It
It's not a
actually
bad
is a
thing.
learning experience.
No, it's not a bad thing. Yet, if I'm a relationship coach, someone could see that as, wait a minute, this guy's going to tell me about been divorced 3 times.
Mhm.
Well, if you'd said that, maybe 10, 12, 15 years ago, yeah, I get you. Yet, I was always wanting to be married and in a committed relationship. So I believed in marriage, yet I didn't have the skills. And when I mentioned about my loss as a child, and all the things that I'd been through as a child, the traumas that I'd been through impacted my relationships. And so as a result of my first marriage, I was immature, I was unfaithful. I was in radio, I was getting all kinds of access, and I'm like, it was too easy for me. And I was immature. I didn't know what it really meant to be in that committed relationship. So that dissolved. I married again and started seeing some obstacles getting in the way. So I had a friend refer me to a therapist, and I started working on myself, and then doing couples therapy and learning what it really meant to be in a committed relationship, and then doing my own work, and then transitioning to this career as this mind body guy, being a mindfulness coach and understanding mindful communications and how to really speak and communicate in relationship, taking all those things to heart. And I was really ready to kind of live a monk's life at one point when I went through my last divorce. And something, I was meditating one night, deep meditation, and I hear this voice like Rafiki from The Lion King says, "It is time." I'm like, you got to be kidding. I'm divorced 3 times, and I just got laid off my job. The radio station I was working for changed its format, and I'm unemployed, living in one room in some dude's house. I had a 27-room house, and I'm in one room in someone's house, and Spirit's telling me to put myself out there. Well, I went for it. I was on this site. I put my profile in. 3 days later, I get this nudge from my current wife, and I didn't look good on paper, but she saw something in my eyes, and we talked, and uh, 15 plus years later, we're as happy as we've ever been, and it's amazing. So it took a lot of work for me to get there. And that's what I meant earlier about doing the work. When you do the work and you really open up yourself to, getting feedback and really taking a look at yourself and how you impact a relationship, it makes all the difference in the world. So all the things that I had learned along the way helped me find this relationship, my soulmate, and be in a relationship that I feel more free than I've ever felt in my life as an individual, and very grateful to have a partner who sees it the same way. And I don't regret any of the stuff I went through, because that's what got me to where I am today.
Okay, well said, and congratulations by
Thank you.
number one. I also wanted to say, despite everything you've been through, that was a deep learning experience for you, and I would love to have you back on with your wife because that's a story. If you want, back on the show with your wife. We're about to move on to your spiritual aspect, but we'll talk after the show about.
Okay, sounds
But
good.
um, tell me about the Reiki and spirituality you've developed and came across, to help you and your wife grow.
Right. Well, I grew up, I grew up in Virginia, so grew up in the South. I was Baptist, Christian, raised Christian. Um, and I had this, I don't know, it was kind of a weird relationship with the church. My grandmother was very religious. My parents weren't very much. I would go to church and loved being in church, but didn't understand why I had to pray to Jesus to get to God. And, I had all these questions, right? That kids have. And as I grew, I always had this spiritual sense since I can very early remember that there was something bigger than me. I believed in God and all these things, and just trying to find it in religion. And I just wasn't getting what I felt like I needed. Fast forward to my second marriage. My wife was African American. She was a Hebrew Israelite, which is basically a congregation of African American Jews that, seeing themselves as the original Hebrews. And so I converted and, was trying to find my spirituality there. And I realized that I really didn't belong in that congregation because the color of my skin. I didn't belong in, cultural Jewish culture because I wasn't born Jewish. And even with the more Orthodox Jews, I was a stranger. I wasn't one of them. So I never felt like I was a part of that group, even though I believed in the principles. I believed in the Judeo-Christian, ethic. And so then I ended up, for some reason, I don't know why, but Spirit led me to take Tai Chi. Tai Chi in Chinatown and here in Philadelphia. And along with that, a thing called Qigong. And it's all working with energy. And from that, I learned meditation. And then from there, I went to acupuncture and got massage and, and then started opening up more with Taoism, which is just about being in balance with nature and learning all these things, Buddhism and, and I started seeing the common denominators of all these religions. And that's where I ended up kind of opening my heart to that. Yeah, I believe in Jesus and I believe in God and I believe in all these things that, bring us together, loving one another, that type of thing. And so my wife had been on a similar journey. She had tried different spiritual directions, and she's actually an interfaith minister. So going back to your question of how did that impact the relationship? Well, we were both looking for a relationship where we could really embrace our spirituality.
Yes.
And so that was one big thing that, for me to convert to Hebrew Israelite with my ex was because I wanted to have that shared in relationship. And it just, obviously didn't work out. And then finding my current wife, where she had very similar ideals and values around spirituality, that was pretty much the first thing that really connected with us. And we put out our values before we even talk to each other on the phone. Because if our values aren't matched, if what's important to me is not important to her, then what's the point of even going further? And so many people get all involved in the physical stuff and then, then they realize we don't have anything in common or we don't have similar values. And that can cause problems in relationship. And so we had ironed all that stuff out before we even talked. And then we talked. And then when we saw each other, there was this, it sounds corny, but it was this magical thing. It wasn't like butterflies in the stomach. It was like I felt all this love coming from her eyes and vice versa. And we knew that there was something bigger than us that brought us together. So,
Talk about a connection.
and
Taoism is like Charles Darwin, right? It deals with
Taoism, no, Taoism originated in China. That's where Tai Chi, the slow moving martial art of Tai Chi, you've seen the yin and the yang sign, or yin yang. Yeah, people say yin yang. That's a symbol of Taoism. And in its simplest forms, it's really about living in balance with nature. And yin and yang is, the opposites of the universe. And then coming together, there's a blend of that. We're not black and white, it's the gray in the middle,
Yes,
right.
that's what I was about to say. Yes, I said the line that goes between the yin and the yang is the most important of all of it.
Yeah.
The middle part. I have a question. So do you listen to beats like beats that are
binaural beats,
or anything like the 369 or 963 or 444? Do you listen to those meditations?
I listened to some with the binaural beats that have certain frequencies. I've done that. I've done some workshops in that, in terms of helping my patients reduce stress. Sometimes I've given them earbuds to put on with that frequency in the background while we're even talking, so that it helps to bring their anxiety down while we're talking about stuff. And personally, I do listen to binaural beats, and I do other meditations as well. And that's another thing that I do. There's an app called Insight Timer, and I do some meditations on that as well. So I narrate them.
Where do you see yourself going in the future with everything that you've been through, everywhere you've been with your wife, just everything as a whole? Where do you see yourself going?
Well, as I call it, my encore career as this, relationship coach for men. My calling was doing this mind body work, and now this is my third chapter of my latter years, is to focus on helping men be the best they can in relationship, continuing the podcast, working with a program to develop, that men can check out, and women too, because honestly, frankly, it's the same thing for both sexes. It's just we have to divide it sometimes, but it's the same stuff. We both do it. So it's me, continuing to grow the podcast, to grow my program, and continue to support men on an individual basis, and as a community as well.
Tell me, I gotta ask you, since you work with the great Miss Wendy Williams. Can you tell me how was it? How was it? I know it was stressful, but give me something positive that you learned from that.
Well, and I'll just clarify, when I say stressful, we're having a lot of fun on the radio, yet there's a lot of stress that goes behind the scenes, as doing a podcast. So that's what I meant about stressful. There's pressure of the ratings, pressure of management, and pressure of time, all those things. And working with Wendy, my partner Brian Carter, the late Brian Carter, may you rest in peace. He's from Charm City, from Baltimore, by the way. We had been together for about 10 years or so. Highly successful morning show in Philadelphia. We survived over 64 competitors in the tenure that we were there. And management got they got an idea that maybe Wendy might be a good addition to our show. At the time, she was infamous for outing rappers, right? And so she was doing that on our show, and we actually had, I think it was some LGBT group that came on with us. Actually, is a YouTube video, I think, still on there with us interviewing them, and her basically coming out to say why she did what she did and kind of explaining herself. But I had known Wendy prior to her coming on board with us. I had met her at a convention radio convention down in Atlanta. And no, we were in LA, and I think we were like at Lionel Richie's house or something. And all of the, the radio guys, they're, walking around, about, their voices and their, and their egos, and they're like, and I'm just kind of chill, right? And I'm just sitting there, and she comes over, and we had struck up a conversation, and she's like, I can't believe, you do this morning show and you're so chill, like all these other guys, you see how their egos are like, and that's just who I am. And so we kind of hit it off that way. So when she became one of our, the co-host, the third co-host, I guess you'd call it, I already had that connection with her. And so we had a different vibe, and, Wendy and I got along really well. And Wendy's very smart, and she always knew what she was doing, very talented. She was just, she knew what she wanted. And some people just, took that the wrong way, and I always admired her for what she did and where she ended up. And it breaks my heart to see where things are today.
Yes.
It's just so sad. And I'm going to say that I was witness to her vulnerability. She would open up to me about things that had happened in the past. And so I felt really, I knew that she had that soft spot in her, and, she had her pain. So I always felt that was a privilege for her to open up to me in that way. And that was before she became the TV host and everything. Just her as a person, that's how I knew her. So.
Well said. I have one more, and then we're going to know about, how to reach you. But the last question, do you think over the course of 3 marriages and the infidelity or whatever happened, that you believe that while you were married, women gravitated to you more just to see if they could get with you, just because like to ruin the marriage, or just because they knew who you were, period, like it ruined the marriage?
Well, I'm going to say clarity. It was only the first marriage that I was unfaithful. Okay. Because I was really, no excuse, but I was like 25, right?
Me too. Too.
Yeah. So I didn't, from that point on, I was faithful. But was I tempted? Oh man. Yes. Because I was on the radio. And even, in Philly, there's something about Philly, man. They love their radio folk. And when I was in other markets I worked in, it's like, oh yeah, you're on the radio, yeah, whatever. But Philly, man, they either loved you or hated you, and they loved us. And so there was a lot of love coming at me, and a lot of times where, it was very tempting, extremely tempting. Yet, I had matured to the point where, I appreciate you, if it was a different situation, it's not about you, it's about my values. So yeah, there were definitely women who made themselves available, and sometimes, having a high profile, morning show and being a local celebrity, there's money that goes with that, and so you have folks trying to, manipulate in order to get there. And so, but I was pretty well grounded at that point, so I was able to say thanks, but no thanks.
Well said. Give him a round of applause, Mr. Smpson. I just wanted to ask, how can we reach you, Mr. Smpson?
Probably the best way is to go to my website. It's menonthepathtolove.com. And if you want to email me, it's bill@menonthepathtolove.com. And that's where you can find the link to my podcast. And if anybody has any questions about their relationship, especially men out there, anything I can do, go to my website, send it to me, and I'll get back to you. As a matter of fact, I give out a free hour-long discovery call that we can talk about anything you'd like without any pressure. Just maybe sometimes one call is all it takes to get some insight on how they can move forward in the relationship. So menonthepathtolove.com.
Thank you so much for joining my show. Stay on the line for 1 second. You guys take care. Y'all be safe, and I'll be back on here a little later. Bye.